all the things under the scope of gender studies,
And women's status.
like economics, history, culture, and all of that, lead to how people, not just men, but fellow women then, perceive and treat women
Okay.
in the Philippine context. No? So some societies are more enlightened. For example, mga Scandinavian, German cultures, and nakakalaban din tayo sa kanila in terms of professionalism,
Yes.
politics. But still, in the everyday life, aka mga daily interactions, it still is very misogynistic.
Yes.
And I am pro-sex. I am pro-enlightenment sa sex na parang I don't think sex is bad. It's a neutral thing.
Mm.
It's the way we approach it. Or pretty much that. So maybe you can start with Zuru introducing
Yeah.
yourself, and later on parang you can go straight to...
Yes, I am Carolyn Sobritchea. I'm a professor of Philippine Studies at the Asian Center, UP, but most of my work in the university was devoted to the establishment of women's studies. I was partly responsible for the creation of the Center for Women's Studies program here in Diliman and in all the campuses of UP. Now that I'm retired, I was requested to chair the technical panel of the Commission on Higher Education on Gender and Women's Studies so that we can integrate gender equality principles in the curricular programs, in the policies of more than 3,000 colleges and universities in the Philippines. So that is my professional life.
Yeah.
Other than that, of course, I'm involved in NGO work, trying to help poor women, women who are marginalized, and of course with Phi Kappa Phi, I'm also trying to promote academic excellence in the university now.
How do you perceive the social dynamics of attraction, sex, marriage, dating, or pretty much the whole spectrum of treating women in the Philippines, both in the man's perspective, in the women's perspective, or in the LGBTQ?
Before I can answer that, as an anthropologist and professor, it's important that we understand the history and how all of these ideas evolve. Is that okay?
Yeah. By all
Yes,
means.
in the literature, in the classes that I teach, we keep telling, and this is borne out by evidence in literature, that prior to the coming of colonialism, there was so much equality. Women were not marginalized. Women and both men shared equal spaces in society. Of course, there was distinctly sex division of labor, but women were the priestesses, they were healers, they both participated in farming.
Mga babaylan, ganun.
Yes. So, my professor, Dr. Hocano, in all the books that he wrote, said that we had a base of gender equality. Unlike other unilineal societies like China, where there was patrilineal tradition, no? The flow of power and property evolved through the father line, male line. We have a bilateral system, which gives really a base for gender equality. The story continues that when the Spaniards came, they introduced the Spanish colonial norms and values. They introduced it in the school, and all of a sudden, Christianity and the narratives of Western norms went into our school system, and this started the great divide in terms of what women can do in society. So the narrative that women should stay at home, take care of the children, and then the men should go out and fight, kill, and bring home income started. When the Americans came, I wrote extensively about this. They tried, American liberal democracy was more liberal and democratic in a sense. Okay, they introduced the public school system and allowed women to go to school. So one of the pioneering achievements, of course, of American colonial law was to get women out of their bedrooms, of the house, to be able to go to school. So public education was introduced, and this started women's participation and access to other opportunities. So we developed teachers, we had employees, and so the little gap, the big gap that we had before, that women should only stay at home, men should go out and work, was partly solved. Okay, but again, if you look at activist, anti-colonial, anti-colonial historians, they would say, but it was the participation of women was within the blueprint of colonialism and neo-colonialism. So there was a lot of stereotyping also that happened. So women went into factory production to supply the global needs. So women entered the sphere, but there was a lot of gender role stereotyping. The military was reserved for men, women can go to factory, and the feminization of teaching. So most of the women who eventually got educated went into this kind of role. But it was very liberative in a way. So after colonialism, we gained our independence, and by this time there are new ideas. No, there are new ideas about patriarchy, the evolution of new narratives about what are the sources. Our critique, and up to now, it's still a discussion. Are indicators of what gender equality is all about. So now we rank very highly. We rank very highly in terms of gender equality. We're number one, I think, in the Philippines, in Asia, and we're top 100 in all over the world. Our issue is it's still Western, the indicators of gender equality, education, employment, and all that stuff. The issues that women face now are not part of these indicators. So every time I would go to the United Nations, I would attend as part of the official delegate or as a representative of academia. We try to raise this in the United Nations. In the ASEAN conferences now, ASEAN countries, women's groups, we try to come out with what are important measures of gender equality, because you have to bring in culture, you have to bring in religion. Poverty is a very serious problem faced by especially by women who are poor, no? So the factors now that we have to negotiate is class. So I can see very empowered women. They are more powerful than men.
Yeah.
Some of our Chinese multinational corporations have passed on the leadership to their women members of the family, and they have proven to be very good. So what I'm trying to say now is at the moment, there are so many dimensions of what constitutes gender equality, which were not there in the beginning. In the beginning, it was access to employment, education, opportunities in the public participation. What we're dealing with now are gender issues that are more personal, that happens within the household, domestic violence, rape, labor trafficking, sex trafficking. Are that too many?
No,
Okay.
those are actually exactly what I'm looking for.
Yes. So, and something else happened in the theory of gender equality. In the beginning, we were saying, capacitate the women so that they can speak for themselves through organizing and all that stuff, and then let them identify what solutions. My problem is, as a professor, there is also a gap now between what millennials and the older generation consider as gender issues. I think among the women now, the young women, what we used to see as behavior that may put them at risk. Our society try to control behavior. Don't go to the public space at night, take the tricycle, because you may be raped. So it's prevention more than anything else. The issue of sexuality, for instance, the issue of sexuality. The older generation, we had a very good reading on what causes rape or sexual harassment. It's the idea of what is sexualized, what makes men attracted to a woman. Okay. I think today things have changed. The narratives of what are sexual, what makes males and females sexually attracted to each other, what is the sexualized part of the body, or conversation has changed. So it is with humility now, as a senior feminist, to understand the context of the millennials. One very concrete example as an educator. During our time as students, during the time of my grandmother, we were not even allowed to wear sleeveless clothes, because this part was sexualized. Everything was sexualized. During the Spanish period, women had to wear long clothes because all of this connote attraction. Guys would get attracted to them. Now it's not. I can see. So one issue, for instance, is that like in this university, we don't have uniforms, right? So there's so much freedom among young people now to wear what they want. And I notice among young girls, they really wear very short shorts, and then their blouses, parts of their body. But if you observe, the sometimes it depends on the males, no, their upbringing, their reading of what is a sexualized part of the body. So it can be a space for freedom. You know what I'm saying? Girls are now asserting it, their identity, and using it as a space of freedom. But for older ones and for government, will have to worry if they are sexually harassed in campus, or they are raped because of their. So you see how the conflicting the narratives and the perspectives are now.
Yeah.
So I think, and then there are more spaces now where gender issues should be interrogated. When we were younger, of course, we would look at the public spaces, no? We will look at the public spaces which are safe, so the roads, the tracks, the train, the school premises. So because this is where all the crimes against women would happen, we label them as crime now. Sexual harassment, rape, torture, and all that. Bullying now is a new issue. But there are new other spaces, social media. So in a current report now, we are preparing some guidelines on what would constitute harassment through the use of social media.
Yeah.
For instance, in school, if a faculty member keeps texting a student for a date, or some what we would call very lascivious ways of interacting, then we request the student to report this. This is now allowed in court. We now but it is a very difficult process now, because we have to really identify what because gender issues, they become a problem because of the negative effects. By itself, the act may not be harmful, but if you go to court and put the person for sexual harassment, file a case of sexual harassment, bullying, or rape, or it has to be the result, what happened. So for instance, a student went on a date with a professor, for instance, and it's not a date, maybe a harmless invitation to go to one of the canteens around, okay? And then after that, she was molested by the professor. She has to report. But sometimes we only know it if she drops out and stops schooling. So it's the impact on the student that can help us negotiate. So for sexual harassment, for instance, in schools now, we have an assessment form, how the performance of the faculty members, and then there is one little item there, reporting the untoward or unpleasant, unbecoming conduct of a professor. It is through this that maybe we can scan through or identify some of these gender issues or problems that women face now. But I go back now to narratives of power and sexuality.
Yes.
So it's very difficult to identify what constitutes now sexual harassment or discrimination against girls. No, although we have laws, so we have to follow the law. We have very definite legal definition of one constitutes rape, sexual harassment, emotional, psychological, physical, sexual. So we have expanded the definitions of all these crimes against women. But the problem is reporting it, because some now have different readings of gender issue or discrimination and empowerment. You see what I'm trying
Yeah.
to say? And in the issue of sexuality now, I don't know where the millennials are, honestly speaking. Maybe we can. I'm
Pause.
sorry about it.
It's alright. Are you distracted?
No, it's you.
Alright.
In the past, we terminated faculty members, outstanding professors, because of sexual harassment or lasciviousness cases filed against them. And they are brilliant professors. So what I did was really to come up with very strict policies and laws. And I'm proud to say that we have lessened the incidents. Kakaunti na ngayon. Dumibagong case na. Sa inyo sa Ateneo, wala bang kasi nasa media ka na. Sa media, grabe, sexual harassment.
Yes, I know. Actually, marami yung...
Sa media is worse.
Yes, it is. Actually, not only for women, but for men.
I'll talk about that now. That is my next narrative.
Sa Ateneo, reported cases. Recently, there was a case about mamaya yung kasama ko sa research nakakita mo. There was a reported case of sexual harassment sa Ateneo for
Mayroong ampari pa
priest and parang you'll never know, parang maybe the next person you're with has the case because kasi nobody talks about it. You like even
stigmatize the fear that
yeah, parang many times these people are scared because if they have this case, what are other people gonna say? Alam mo yun, parang, oh, this professor molested me. Tapos, they would take it against themselves na parang, people might think I'm a slut.
Yes.
So,
babalikan ka niya kasalanan mo, blaming. We call it victim blaming. So, we're very strict in UP now because there's a gender sensitivity orientation for the faculty. The Women's Studies Association of the Philippines is now hosted by Ateneo, Saloma, Professor Saloma, and they will lead now in influencing schools to come up with more stricter policies. But in my second narrative, it's about males also. So may I continue?
yeah, okay. Sure.
We have had a very strong women's movement in the Philippines, and that is one of the reasons why we managed to deal with all of these gender issues. I'm proud to say we have many women's groups. Academe has taken on the advocacy for gender equality. But we moved on also. And if you look at the Philippine Commission on Women now, we are saying that gender equality can never be achieved if we don't look at the problems faced by men. Males have also been victims of patriarchy. Males have been very unhappy too in some of the gender role stereotypings that were given to them. So now we are collecting data also. We are negotiating some of the problems and trying to help solve the problems faced by men. So in all our advocacy also, we try to see how to empower men. What's major problem now? Males have higher incidences of dropout rates, non-completion, non-graduation. So the statistics on education now favors women. And we're saying what will happen to our society now. Multiple burden will double. I mean, women stay at home and then they'll be breadwinners as well. So it's in the interest also of society, especially women, if male continue to finish their schooling.
This is actually a global issue because for the whole world, men drop
There are
out.
many causes. We have done extensive studies on this. It is culture based. It has something to do with recruitment in the military, in the underground movement. In the South, for instance, so many boys dropped out because they are recruited. The demand for boys to go to the farm right away. Our schools have done something about it. We have developed many programs where uh, young boys, girls who have left the school can return to school, and with a very enabling curriculum. So we are trying to reach out. So so this is a very serious issue faced by men also. Another is, of course, some sexual practices. The Philippines has one of the highest incidence of HIV/AIDS, and the the sector or the category where the incidence is very high is among males having sex with males, same sex. There is bisexual relations, and AIDS is also very high, but it is higher among same-sex persons. We have been pushing for an anti-discrimination law in the past 4 Congresses. The women's groups have pushed for it to give legal identity, respect, and protection of individuals based on their sexual and gender orientation. The United Nations now, we have signed the international agreement to respect, protect the rights of LGBTs. SOGIs ang tawag natin. But there is so much resistance by very conservative members of the parliament, of our Congress, and we could not get this law passed. What we have done is we let some local government come up with local government policies, and on their own, because under the law, you can come out with policies that can solve festering problems in your community. One model is Quezon City. So they have a very good, they have a policy on protection and respect of the rights of LGBTs. They have anti-bullying and some of these local government policies that protect people of different sexual and gender orientation now. So we're moving towards that direction. So feminism or women's advocacy has taken on the cudgels also. And because we know that poverty is a festering problem in the country, we know that some women who are very rich are not also pro-women. So we have a joke in the women's movement when we say they are males in women's body. And over the years, we have had advocates of women's empowerment coming from the male sector. Some of the milestone laws were sponsored by male legislators. President Ramos, for instance, we honor President Ramos for helping us come out with many of the laws for women at the moment. In the University of the Philippines also, some of the university presidents as well as female vice presidents were very enabling in getting us all these policies and programs to promote gender equality in our country.
You mentioned na when women behave freely, it also is up to the men's perspective too. I see where you're going there, and I kind of want you to elaborate with that.
The theory of agency. The theory of agency, that individuals are agents and empowered by themselves. So they also have the right to negotiate what they like, what is freedom for them. Because we have been too much, this is the overbearing narratives coming from the state, from government policies. Postmodernism now, the theory of postmodernism tells us that individuals are agents. And at a certain point, they have a say on what is good for them. Except that when they are raped in the streets, it's the state that is accountable. And you will have a police that will be detained. You know what I mean? So we negotiate this very difficult space now of individual agency and the risk and the responsibility that they may happen, because this is not a safe space for them. There's so much crime happening, and the responsibility of the state. So this is a very, very difficult path that we are taking now. I want to believe in individual agency. I want to believe that at the end of the day, a woman, a male, millennials can identify for them what is good based on their context. But there's so much risk. And when something happens to them, the school is responsible, the school officials, the police is responsible. So it's mediating the restrictions, the regulations of the state, and the space below, especially when it talks of sexuality. Okay, one big debate now is because of HIV/AIDS and unwanted pregnancy. I was part, as CHED official, I attended the commission we have the Convention on the Elimination of Discrimination Against Women. This is an international law which we agreed that all countries must abide to certain principles of promoting gender equality. So this is the United Nations mechanism, and this is the mechanism of the Human Rights Council, which we agree. So that if some a kababayan, a migrant worker is abused or in another country, we can use this overriding shared laws and principles. And I'm sad that our government just wants to get out of all of these international human rights bodies. Okay, so the tension now is how do you read freedom? How do you read, and how much agency you should give? One example, the Philippines has the highest incidence of teenage pregnancy. And we were told, what are we doing? Number one problem, it was asked by the International Human Rights Courts, teenage pregnancy. And I said, we're trying very hard to empower the girls to have access to safe sex. You can quote me. But we have pushed for access to contraceptives, agency. They have control. So when you have control, you must have all the means as well. Okay. So what we have done so far in our relentless advocacy, if you notice, condoms are now openly displayed in drugstores. Do you notice that?
Kahit sa convenience stores.
It was a struggle to get those out. And then we had a very conservative officials. They removed sexuality in the curriculum of the elementary grade. So we developed modules, how to protect yourself, and if part of it, we have to accept the fact that young people are sexually active. In our time, the norm was monogamy and no sex until after marriage. Tell that to the Marines now. Young people are so sexually active. You can just look at all the motels and the cars and the tricycles parked. When we did a study on HIV/AIDS infection and risk, we monitored who are entering all of these motels, and they are young couple who are just in love with each other. So agency is also giving them all the information, giving them all the gadgets to protect themselves. This is a tension we have with very conservative governments, leaders who try to block all of these initiatives. The good news, I think, now in DepEd, they will return the sexuality education module.
What compelled them to?
We have a more progressive
ideologies, kumbaga.
The leaders, the outlook of the leaders. Later I'll tell you who they are, not in this conversation.
just to clarify lang briefly, the term agency.
Agency is a theory. It's a theory of power. There are many loci of power. One is state power, power brought about by your ethnic background, by the leaders of your ethnic group, power brought about by your social class, if you're rich, so it's your money, it's your influence, and then it's power lodged in the individual. So the power individual is you're able to negotiate the imposition of the state, the imposition of your customs and tradition, the imposition of your class, you come from rich or poor, and as an agent, you negotiate all of these spaces to protect yourself, to promote your individual success, to get your dreams come true. So the power of agency, the individual power. Yeah.
From my follow-up question, how do conservatives step in? And regarding sexual education, what can you say about people who do not talk about it? Not only sexuality in the way of reproductive health, reproductive protection, sexual empowerment, pero why is it that people don't talk about it? Why is it such a taboo? Even in American culture na parang very ambiguous the whole dating world na like you actually have to talk to a clinical sexologist or like a person who studies attraction to actually know the right way. Parang anak, manligaw ka lang, dapat lagi mong bigyan ng, dapat chivalrous ka. There are so much ambiguous instructions, and yet the issue is so taboo. Not only through sex, pero about attraction. Parang you text first, I text first.
It boils down, I think, to our history and how we have considered sexual act or sexual narratives as taboo. And I think up to today, one of the studies that we did is the lack of connection between father and son. Fathers cannot talk to their sons about sexuality and sexual behavior. It is, in fact, the communication between mothers and son is more fluid and more open. I can refer you to the study. It's taboo, and unfortunately, sexual ideas about sex are learned through peers, barkada. All the studies show media, but the right kind of, I think, the education, no? The nurturing that should come from parents is not there. There's embarrassment. I cannot talk also about it, sometimes jokingly like that, but we don't have the language. It's global, I think, and I'm sorry I don't have an explanation for it. It's such an entrenched tradition. The good thing now, I think, is we're more open because social media already has influenced it a bit, and there is more open discussion now of sexual practices, romance, compared to how we were when we were younger during our generation. It was really not talked about. Even among couples, you just do it, you don't talk about it. The taboo is such entrenched. There's embarrassment. Yes.
I think it's mostly caused by what you mentioned kanina about agency.
Yes, you were socialized.
Prejudice. Yeah. I know where it comes from, and based on what you said. Interesting. We actually found a block among ourselves. So maybe that can be an avenue for research. Siguro.
Yeah.
Okay, well, given that this is a multimedia class, how much of the media, and when I mean media, both traditional and new media, film, television, news, maybe even memes on Facebook, internet, YouTube, how much of, even like mga vlogs, parang like people who try to do cool stuff online, how much of it do you think is influenced by reality, and how much of reality is influenced by the media when it comes to perception and treatment towards women? And parang if you could notify na something is uniquely Filipino, you can bring it up na rin.
Well, media, we are very protective of the rights of media. Freedom of speech and freedom is one of the constitutional provisions that we should respect. But there's so much regulation happening also now. What we have done is the Philippine government, through the Philippine Commission on Women, has tried to influence the media community. So there is a media community, and force them to come up with standards. So we monitor it also. We try, and there's a little orientation, I think, on how to prevent the very unpleasant exposure, or what we would consider media narratives or media photos that are very anti-women, okay? What we would consider bastos or nakaka. So merong self-regulation ang media community. And if you look at the Facebook of the Philippine Commission on Women, there are media standards, okay? But that's easier said than done, because media has to play the market, right? What is what earns, what earns and what does not earn. What I have noticed, and what my students are telling me, is we need models. And the millennials especially, they try to copy mga artistang katulad mo, how you behave, yung language. So, ang dali-dali nilang kopyahin yung behavior. Kaya we expect also some of our mga talents, no, those who are exposed, those who communicate messages also, to follow some of the ethical standards. And ngayon, there's so much misogyny in the use of pagmumura, language, and nagkakagayahan na eh. I can see yung word na pang-ina, I cannot even mention it. It has been such a common language na in the social media. And it is a very bad curse, because you curse your mother, right? And I see that the network also tries to avoid it.
You're not allowed to say it on TV.
Sa TV. No, pero meron tayong ngayon dinedemonize na naggalit ang mga women, na some of the announcers, because he embarrassed, I think, one of our women leaders. Pumasok siya sa politika with the hope, I think, na pwede siyang invited to become a candidate. So there's so much bashing now of some of the announcers for being so misogynist. One actor who said, "Move on, what is your problem?" To a woman who's being attacked now on all fronts because of her leadership role. And then this actor said, why can't you just move on and support this government? And he fails to see all these misogynistic attacks against women in our society now. So so if I were to summarize, there is self-regulation of media. So, and media has some of the practitioners try their best also to adhere to some human rights principles and gender-sensitive standards. But once in a while, we know that some media practitioners also are not that careful, and of course, because of the industry also, they have to calibrate what is truly gender sensitive, polite, human rights based, and what the market needs. And the market is so diverse. The market is so diverse now.
Oh.
Yes.
This is so interesting. Grabe, like nanganganak ng questions yung mga questions ko.
Diba? Ang hirap.
Yeah, it is.
Pero modeling of media people is very critical.
This includes ano rin, diba? Like, even beauty standards as well.
Yes. Nakita mo yung white is beautiful. So everyone just wants to be white now.
It's an Asian thing.
It's an Asian thing, yeah. White is beautiful. So the bashing of color, skin color, media has been extremely implicated in this mga concepts of beauty and color and yes.
In a way, kasi, ito in my perspective, just for me to bring something out there on the table. In the mainstream industry, at the end of the day, is still an economy.
Yes.
It's a business. So sometimes, although some people have ideologies that they're a little bit against, they sort of have to feed it.
Yes, balance.
Because it's income.
Yes,
Otherwise,
it's
the
income.
industry wouldn't live.
Yes.
A few questions lang, and if you still want to keep talking, we can expand some more. Like, I'll just bring out 3 questions lang para at least I won't have to interrupt you when you talk later. My first concern is, when does feminism get out? Social justice in general, and in more particular now, since gender class to feminism get out of hand. There's the term feminazi sometimes kasi if the feminist gets too like ganon. Once it get out of hand.
Women who cannot control their power also.
Yeah. Second case is the case of intersectionality in global aesthetics, aka modeling. So yun nga, the example kanina minention ko prior to recording this video is yung case of Solen Heussaff. Bakit pag siya nagpapasexy, it's okay, she's French. Pero why is it when someone else who looks obviously Filipino, for example, of GMA, parang Pox kasi
colonial narrative.
Colonial narrative. The third concern is how are men such as myself. This is related to when the social justice got out of hand. Parang I'm not a woman. So there are some times where I discuss with my friend. Sometimes kasi my friend goes parang, Bruno, do people just really see me as a sexual object? Why is it that whenever I go out and talk to people, why does they always ask for sex?
Sexualized na.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then parang you just have to learn to say no. And then she said, yeah, but the thing is, you don't know that because you're not a woman. I could get beat up for rejecting. Even that case na with the guy na may meme na parang, paano mo nasabi? I don't know if you know that sa Facebook, pero what makes men... This is more like
what
psychological.
What are the gender issues also faced by men?
Parang why are men so blind? Because
why are men so blind
towards women's like like this is more like a psychological thing than a sociological thing. Pero like for me, medyo alarming to sa akin kasi parang empathic ako eh. Kaya lang bakit hindi ko maintindihan na parang nga no? Like why do you
like relate to experiences of women.
Like it has to take a lover of mine to tell me na parang you don't know that. You're not a woman. You don't know how many guys hit me up. Pero like in my case, like if some empowered gay men try to send me like unwanted pictures on social media because influencer eh. So parang bakit iba yung na-apekto sa kanila kesa sa akin?
The effect, yes.
Yeah. So yun lang, 3 questions. So
well, because we are brought up as males and females, we were socialized. And yung personal experience mo as you grow up influences the way you look. And I can appreciate the fact that some males cannot understand the context of women, no? So I think the solution is continuous conversation and respect for each other, especially in a marital relationship or a romantic relationship. I can understand the differences because you live different lives in a way. You go out, experience. So I think conversation and a little understanding from males to the context of female partners is greatly appreciated. My second narrative is we have to deal with men's issue. As I said, you're also victims of patriarchal norms. You have to be strong, you have to be good looking, even if you just want to lie down the whole night. I'll give you one very recent study that we did. We believe that to promote gender equality, we have to solve the problems faced by females and males, brought about by patriarchal norms. So males are also victims of patriarchy. The imposition on you should be good looking, you should be strong, you should bring home enough income for the family. We did a study on abuse of boys because boys are dropping out of school. This is just the most recent study conducted by different experts from the university. And we did a counseling interview because males are so macho. Even boys will not tell you that they're being beaten up, they're being sexually molested by a male friend because of machismo. You know, you're not supposed to talk about your weakness, right? So in a methodology which we call counseling context, the researchers tried to bring together an interview in a very confidential counseling context, which means once the boys have spoken, we promise them that their conversations will not get out, and if you can see the tension in their face, they will go through healing. Because it's very hard for boys, because of machismo, to spell out their personal experiences. You know what we found out? There was terrible suffering. Many of the boys have suffered from different kinds of abuses. They are abused by their mothers, abused by their fathers, who force them to go to the field and work. What is very revealing in the study was the overbearing, bad-mouthing, non-stop bickering also of the mother. And then the hierarchy, if you're a younger boy, child, and then you have an ate. So all of these sources of, because we have to understand where they're dropping out, what's happening to them. They're not interested in going to school anymore. So abuse of boys is very serious also. And we had to deal about this. So now we share the data in depth ed. But one of the more serious one is sexual harassment. They're being sexually harassed by males also. This is a very young age, and then it leaves some kind of trauma, some kind of confusion about their sexual identity, some difficulty in dealing with, and then they feel so guilty, the guilt imposed by the church because of the narratives and the moral values imposed by the church now. So there are very serious male issues in our society. You have to understand why there is a lot of broken families now, and then brought about by migrant work. You have fathers working abroad, mothers staying at home. Now it's the mothers working abroad, it's the fathers left behind. We have a very good study on fathers left behind and how they cope now with the mothering role, with the housekeeping roles, caregiving roles also.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have to understand also the context of males now. And how they are abused also. And then there are age very empowered women also who will try to gain the attraction of men and then abandon them.
Yeah.
Abandon. It happens both now. And then abandon them if they're not smelling as good as they used to smell. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's a very more complex
exactly
society. Yes. The church has been very forceful in enforcing its norms and values. We respect the church, but what is nice about the church also, we have many progressive. No less than the Pope has been very progressive. I will not promote LGBTs because it's against the law of God, but I invite them to come to the church. I will pray for them. So the Pope now is under attack also because of his very progressive views about human rights.
Yeah. Last night I was in church, no?
Yes. We have an organization of Catholics for reproductive rights. So Catholics, because the very conservative view of the Catholics is no to condoms, no to denial monogamy and filial piety, and no sex before marriage. And I say, tell that to the Marines. You're not living in this world today if you deny all of those.
It is quite old-fashioned.
Yes, it's old-fashioned. So acts are committed. okay, and they are interpreted by the person who experienced the act, okay, by the person who committed the act. That's why we have a court system. In the case of sexual harassment, for instance, a man may have done something and he did not consider it offensive. And then you will find a girl, a woman who happened found it offensive. So you have to intervene. Now we have developed some informal procedures. No? If they're not very major crimes, there's some kind of negotiation and then forgive me, mga patawaran, ganon. But then the promise never to happen again. Okay, one very good example is, for instance, a very recent case where a male professor kept holding the back of a colleague, and he kept repeating it, the back, and then like that, no? And after some time, one of the indication that you find it offensive is you should say no, don't do it again. So there is resistance, and if you do it, then you're liable to commit an offense based on the law. And she kept parrying the behavior and saying, please don't, and he kept doing it. So now she filed a case of court, a case of sexual harassment. So now it's in a discussion. So maybe because of the law, because of the policy, there will be some conversations, mediation. But at the end of the day, it's the offended party. That is what justice means. It is the reading that the offended. So you have to prove that she was offended, and the effects on this. She's scared to go to the faculty room already. She's scared at night. She might meet the guy whom she is now pursuing a case against.
At what point does it become to victim mentality? Although, like, kasi that's a case of tama naman eh. Alam mo yun na parang tama. Pero like,
we want to believe there is due process, to minimize victimization.
For example,
to minimize the commission of judgment against people who did not do the crime. No?
Yeah, exactly. Parang yung akala mo, kasi minsan gano'n naman talaga eh. Parang the person just being just too sensitive. I mean, like, the whole feminazi idea. Alam mo yun, na parang, yung mga feminists na parang seryoso ka ba? Or yung mga ganun.
Yung mga hindi masyadong offensive. Of course, rape is rape. There has to be some medical that courts have to do. But yung communication, kunyari, offensive language, offensive behavior, merong mga informal procedures. When I was still an official of the university, of course, the men also came from a tradition of patriarchy. To be that, to be good looking, you have to be macho. Di ba the construction of being machismo, dapat may girlfriend ka dito, dapat meron kang... Well, my professors were like that. I think they didn't want to be disloyal, but the machismo, the narrative, the standards of tunay na lalaki demanded that they would have a girlfriend. They demanded that be real by showing ganyan. They were also products and victims of their own times, right?
Yeah.
So what we're doing now, because there is confused reading on what is offensive or what is discriminatory, at least for some, not serious crimes, negotiation and conversation. So, for instance, when I was still an official, and we told the professor, this is now offensive, you should not say all these jokes. And then they would promise not to give those jokes again. And then just monitor. So, over time, nagbabago. When I was a student, ang dami nilang metaphor na very sexist. And I'm talking of outstanding professors. Now, you don't see it anymore. They're more giving examples when they present videos like that, present lectures. We grow over time, but it is negotiation. It is communication between males and females, the offender and the offended, and paliwanagan siguro. But I'm talking of mga light, yung some are really mediated by law now. So if they are considered crimes. crimes. Offenses are lighter. Offenses. Pag nilabel na crimes, talagang gagamit na tayo ng batas at saka justice system. Okay?
Yeah. In the world of modeling, bakit laging yung Filipino person yung ginajudge for being a slut? Slut shaming. The whole slut shaming and intersectionality, why is it that the French person it's okay?
Yung colonial pa rin. Sa colonial, it's a colonial bashing pa rin. Filipinos in modeling are considered what again? I didn't get it.
Well, when Filipino women, when they look sexy in whatever media outlet there is, parang bold star yung dating.
Sexualized.
Bold star yung dating, kunwari. Pero pag kunwari, half foreign or full foreign,
Mas may respect.
parang, model kasi siya.
Siguro yung history din natin na we were considered sex slaves during the Japanese period. During the colonial period, women were offered as parausan ng mga pari, parausan ng mga colonial masters. There is really a stereotype all over the world now because for some time, all of these wars, all of this, we have considered it, we have put a stop to it. We were the suppliers of women in prostitution in many of the dens all over the world. It took a lot of energy and effort to stop this. We were suppliers of women in prostitution dens. I'm so proud about some countries who have helped us. Japan now is very strict. Of course, they still violate it. No, they get out as domestic workers, as employers. When you monitor them, you go to some Asian countries. Oh gosh, all over Asia, we had to raid prostitution dens and bring home women in airplanes by the plane load. In the 90s to early 2000, when we had to put a stop on sexist slavery, we labeled it now that there was a debate then among women's groups. Some are saying selling your body is a human right as long as it is your right. Why we can sell our voice, we can sell our looks, why can't we sell our bodies? We had a problem with some of our comrades, for instance, in Thailand, because we had different readings. Now we have labeled it as prostitution is a human rights violation. But again, some women would rather go into that. They earn a lot. So what does Thailand try to do now? They just try to give all the protection. They regulate it, they give condoms, there is security measure. One of the bad practices, of course, in the Philippines was we have drinking. They drink. Men would go out and drink alcohol, tagay, ganon. And then there would be women in prostitution waiting, and then there would be a taxi. They would be brought to mga motels. I understand this is still happening now. But what I'm trying to say, the devalued look of females, no? I think it has to do with the global perception that sexualized sexy bodies, hindi yung highly respectful woman na pwede siyang judge, highly educated. So parang ganun, parang model siya pero ibang klaseng modeling for the consumption of lascivious men. Does that make sense to you? The global construction of Filipino females. It's very hard to construct images of Filipino females in a more respectful, powerful role. They're always as malambing, sexy, always ready to give happiness, comfort, to men.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
But that kind of construction of males, Filipino males, is happening also. There is a lot of dating also happening now. LGBT gay men would come to the Philippines. They would stay in hotels. In one study that was done, there's a lot also of sex trafficking happening to boys. So at a certain point, we were getting so many gay tourists, and they would go to certain hotels already, and there would be boys. That's why we have a very high incidence of HIV/AIDS. So we are trying to traffic that also. Well, we hope some local government agencies can do it. There is a lot of sexual abuse of boys, but it's done by males. I have yet to see women trying to buy sex from males. Maybe there are, but I don't know. Maybe in a classy way. I'm more bothered about boys happening now, especially they're expected to be breadwinners. They go out and the parents expecting to bring home money. So they sell their bodies. Meron tayong pinatay ngayon, we're closely monitoring, and the police are monitoring prostitution via video. We closed down many shops in Metro Manila where the girls would appear on TV. They would remove their clothes, but the men who are mostly from abroad, they would pay through ATM muna, and then they would access it. So the video would show girl or a couple making love, porno sites, and we raided. We raided many of these porno shops already. You are aware of this? Maybe I can bring it to some of the shops, but they tried to close it.
No.
Yeah, you can interview local government agencies.
Sure.
And we closed down many. They were raided.
I'll try to reach you again after this.
Yeah, but the clients are mostly males, maybe elderly males. So they would open it, and then there appears a girl striptease, dancing, or couples making love. Porno sites also. So we in some of the incidents, the parents were brought to court, and they were the ones punished. The parents are the ones selling the bodies of their children because of poverty.
Just for the record, and parang on what I know about this, I do know one guy who the girl sort of bought sex.
Wow, it's nice narrative.
Medyo.
Mas bata yung...
Pero the guy would not talk about it, of course, kasi machismo.
He needed the money.
Yeah, needed the money. So it's more like parang, alam mo yung sugar mommy.
We have sugar mommy. Sugar mommy phenomenon din pala. Tama.
That is one. And another one is the whole gold digger artista type. May mga babae na
who would sell their bodies for the money.
Actually, the parents would go with the child all the time sa mga party, sa shooting. Tapos pag may nakita silang mga... Because like rich guys, they always look for hot women, and
yes.
sometimes the parents push.
Yes.
Alam mo yun?
Yes.
The parent, yung talaga, yung nagkakipag-date yung mommy talaga katabi. Alam mo yun? Just for the record, just so you...